This notion, it's a very un-Darwinian notion, as I'll get to later, but that we, in some senses, there's an idea of universal brotherhood in which we have debts to people that we have nothing in common with, nothing genetically, nothing culturally. This is ultimately a new notion in the world. By the way, we can also see if these virtues are in some senses human by looking to ancient Greece and Rome before Christianity. We talked about a moment ago the idea of compassion. Aristotle makes a list of the virtues. Compassion does not appear on that list. In fact, for Aristotle, it's something more like a vice. And so compassion becomes a virtue in Western civilization after Christianity. Or consider another value that I think we all hold dear in this room, the preciousness of human life. We're scandalized when human life is gratuitously taken. That's a very important value in our culture, but the Greeks and Romans didn't really share it. In ancient Sparta, they would take the sick or defective child, deposit it on the mountainside, and they were perfectly happy to find it dead in the morning. And this is frankly not even the biggest scandal. The big scandal is the great thinkers of ancient Greece, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, knew about this, but they viewed it with relative equanimity. For them it was no big deal. And why? Because the idea of the sort of what we would say the sanctity, the preciousness of every human life, that came into the world with Christianity. Now, there are many people, including the atheist Sam Harris, who says those Christians bear a heavy responsibility for slavery. Look at the Civil War. There were Christians on both sides of the debate. But slavery is not so hard to explain. It's rooted in human selfishness. Slavery existed in every known civilization from the dawn of man. For many centuries, slavery needed no defenders because it had no critics. It was like the family. It is only in Western civilization, well, Christendom, that slavery became controversial. And people say, well, it took an awful long time. We had to wait for the Enlightenment. Nonsense. Slavery disappeared in Western civilization and certainly in Europe between the 4th century and the 10th century. Now you can say it was replaced by serfdom, which was not exactly a walk in the park. But serfdom is a great improvement over the idea of being owned by someone else. And then in the modern era, anti-slavery developed again as a direct consequence of a Christian principle. First the Quakers and then the evangelical Christians began to say, wait a minute, if it's really true that we are created equal in the eyes of God, a theological point, from that, an astonishing and important political lesson follows. Namely, no man has the right to rule another without consent. And this notion becomes not only the basis of anti-slavery or abolition, but if you think about it, it's also the moral root of democracy. What is